Ready to get started? Having a great
Mag?
Woo! All right. Hi, my name is Lucas Guimaraes. This is the third time I'm hosting this panel, and this is the biggest turnout I've ever had for this panel, so just a little bit nervous. But and I am joined by my wonderful guests here. If you would so all briefly introduce yourselves.
You go first? Okay. Hey, my name is Shota Nakama. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, I guess, or originally from Okinawa, Japan. And I produce Sonic Symphony. And yeah, there you have it.
I'm Joe Newman, aka Newman Joe. I have done a bunch of video game arranging and a bunch of stuff. I may not have seen me perform, but I've done a bunch of things with an online community called Dwelling of Duels. Thank you. We got some duels. And I think 8 gang nominations and 1 win with Jay. I don't know if he's here. And then most recently you might have heard me because I did the music for this year's Swag. Which was a lot of fun.
Slay, Joe. Woo. Oh, you okay? Hi. Do you want to go? You go.
I can still go since I'm like. Hi, I'm around all sorts of the video game music community. I haven't done a whole lot of live stuff yet, but last year was literally my first MAGFest. Woo! Second MAGFest, baby. And then it doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but anyways, I have been I participate in a bunch of the VGM communities, including Dwelling of Duels, Overclocked Remix, Pixel Mixers, and Game Grooves. And I've been on over 50 of the compilation albums at this point and starting to release more of my own stuff. I even have a viola quartet album recently that came out.
Sick.
It's all Final Fantasy music.
All right. Hi, I'm Lacey. I do video game music covers and video game arrangements on YouTube, and I do full music videos of each of those as well. I've released a couple albums over the last few years of Persona music and Metroid music, and I perform all of those arrangements live. So my plan is to take you guys through kind of what that looks like as well. So, yeah, thanks.
Testing. Hello, everybody. My name is Player 2. I'm an electronic video game remixer, probably the least talented person on this table here.
Not true.
Definitely not true.
I've been producing remixes seriously for about 5 years now. I started in 2018, and just now I'm starting to finally see results.
Hell yeah.
Keep going, people.
That's what it is.
You know, it's all about, you just gotta keep going. But yes, it's been super fun. Got a whole bunch of, same thing as Lacey, YouTube, 100%, Spotify, all that stuff. So excited to be here.
Yeah.
I guess we'll introduce Tony when he gets here.
Tony's a bit late because he's rehearsing for another set, but he will be here.
Cool. Take it away.
What is arranging? I'm not going to go too in-depth, but arrangement is a musical adaptation of an existing composition. So if you have a song you like, then you want to just like transfer it to a harp part, or maybe you like have this funk song you like and you want to turn it into a metal song. All of that is arranging. What does arranging include? Reharmonization / changing up the original melody with changes, adding in original sections, different instrumentation, new genres, and much, much more. There's a very rich history to arranging. I've even once heard the debate between the terms remix, arrangement, and cover, and I still have not heard a definitive conclusion for that. So if anyone has one, please come to me. Please come to us. It would be I've been around this scene for like 10 years overall. I still don't know. Next slide sounds good. All right, so hi, a little bit more about myself. Some of my favorite games. You can tell I did not update these slides because I didn't add Baldur's Gate 3. I am not still on Act 1, however.
Proud of you.
Yeah. Paper Mario, in a bit. Absolutely love Paper Mario 1000 Year War. Any of these things on there I can talk about for hours. Tons of other stuff I love. Let's move on to the next slide. My process. So my usual idea for a process is I start out with the initial idea. And I think to me, before I even, because I've tried to just like open my DAW first, and I have found I am not the person that can just completely improvise something from nothing. So I need like even if the idea is as vague as I am going to do a funk song. But even if I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do a funk song, or I'm gonna do a metal song, or EDM or something, I always, even if it's original composition, I always come in with a melody first, like a melody or something else that I can latch onto and start it with. The next one, I've also not updated this because I write it out in Sibelius, but I sometimes use Reaper now for more electronic-based genres. And I like to make sure that before I start polishing up what notes are there, that I make sure all of the notes first in are good. The next, feedback is an integral part of my process, and whenever I have the opportunity to, even if I can just borrow someone's ears for like 5 minutes, I'm like, hey, can you listen to this? Is this like, it's only 3 minutes. That'd be nice. Edit sheets and export mockups as necessary. That's if I have collaborators. So again, if it's like electronic or like some doom metal I'm doing on my own, then I don't really, I make the sheets look a little nice for myself if need be, but yeah. Recording, mixing, feedback, and mastering goes as step 5, which I would love to go into that process, but that's another panel, and this is the arranging panel. All those are still important steps, though. So some lessons I've learned, because I've done this for quite a while, and if you ask me about a genre, there's probably a chance I've at least dabbled in it. So the first is the 8-bar suggestion, because, you know, how many of you have heard about or dealt with writer's block? Raise your hands. Wow. So the 8-bar suggestion, I've gotten this, there are a couple of variations of this, but basically every time I start a project, I just get the first 8 bars done. And the first 8 bars, even if you're working in like 200 BPM or something, that's still like 10 seconds of music. And even if it's just a piano sketch, it's still something, and that's a lot better to leave you in a session than nothing. And another thing I've heard, another thing I've started adding to the mix with that is like add a 10 to 15 minute timer. This is more for like especially getting that starting off a project and just doing that and doing that for 8 bars. And I found myself sometimes doing like 16 bars or sometimes like starting with 32. And it's like you can always go back and polish it later. That's part of the feedback, part of the rest of it. Oh. I'm a bit of a fool because I forgot to ask this about the beginning of the panel, but who here arranges video game music? Raise your hands.
Nice.
All right, who here wants to get into arranging it more? Yeah. Sweet.
Always.
Cool.
Always.
Yeah.
And I'd assume like at least most of you are here to improve your arrangement, so yeah, I was supposed to, so yeah, that's the 8-bar suggestion, definitely. I found different people definitely work with different strokes, so whether it's a amount of music for you or whether it's like a timer, both mixed together I found is a really nice combo. Other lessons I learned, don't be afraid to stray away from the original. Like the thing about covering a song, and it's very interesting because there's definitely 2 camps. Like you see angry comments on YouTube like, you didn't include all of the orchestra from this original song. But on the other hand, like it's like the original song that you're covering, it's likely already a good song. So what instead you're thinking of, it's likely even a great song if you're considering spending the time to cover it. So you got to think like, what can I add to this song? What can I give to this song that's different? A lot of my favorite covers out there, it's because there's a different performer, there's something else that shakes it up. Speaking of, take things from your favorite songs. Seriously. There's so much music. You got into this for a reason. You got into this because you love music, and there's so much you can take from your favorite, you know, the old age Adam, good artists copy, great artists steal. So steal, but steal responsibly.
Steal
This is
within the
true.
value of the law. Don't break the law.
Yeah, definite.
Not legal advice.
Definitely. Yeah. Obviously, like, but like, if like, for example, you don't know how to write drums well, take what you consider some bands that have great drums. I don't know, like Deep Purple, King Gizzard, or something, and like transcribe their drum parts, or do like whatever else you can. Do your homework, research. That's kind of similar. I found that some of the worst times I've had emulating, because I jump into a lot of new genres, and the worst times I've found is when I do like little to no research, and even just like listening to that genre, both like casual listening and active listening can really help. And yeah, that's Doing your homework on that is definitely important because it doesn't seem like it's like I want to just get straight into the arrangement. I want to get straight into the arrangement. But the less you go in blind, I've definitely found is the better. Have other people review your arrangements. The more you nail down in the arrangement phase, the less work you have to do later. It's kind of like the comparison I like to give is drawing. Like with drawing, like with writing a paper, if you have a good rough draft, then everything else is going to be just smoothing out or if you have with drawing, if you have like a good rough sketch, then everything else is just the different layers, like adding colors to it, line art and everything. So it's a very similar thing. The more you do in the arranging phase, the less you're gonna have to like be fiddling with the knobs during the mix, or be working with the mastering, or like be struggling with the recording, being like, why does this sound so bad? And it's like, oh, because I didn't fix it in the arranging phase. Never be afraid to ask questions. Be curious, and that one's general life advice too. I've found that helpful. Yeah. And the most important one, and I'll be saying this a lot, I started doing this a lot at the MAGFest panel. How many of you here have unfinished projects? Raise your hands. You need to finish your shit.
Yeah.
You need to finish your projects.
Yeah.
Finish your projects. It helps.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't think I have any other slides, so I think we're going next to.
Okay.
You want to go? You want to go next?
Yeah. Sure. Do you want to go next?
Sure, I can go next. Well, I guess like you guys can talk about the arranging stuff, and I'm gonna talk about like a little bit more from a different angle. So Sonic Symphony, official Sonic Magical concert. So our arranging process is like a very, very different. So like obviously we have deadlines to make, deadlines at basically the concerts, right? And also we have to send the music to the composers and have them screen the stuff. And if they don't like certain things, then we have to revise the stuff. And how should I describe this? So we have like a lot of process before we go into concert. So we choose the music to play, and we take comments from Sega, and internally we talk about that stuff, and also get comments from the fans, and then we come up with ideas of, hey, maybe like what if like we combine these songs and make a medley, and so that's the first step, right? And then we actually make the arrangements. And then second, we send it to the video team so they can create a video and sing perfectly in sync with the music, and we create click track. And then we create necessarily backing track or synth track and stuff, and mix, master, and do all kinds of stuff to make it concert ready. And then we rehearse. So there's actually like quite a lot of things involved here. But purely speaking, the arrangements, I'm in charge of doing a lot of all the band and orchestra arrangements, and it's a beast, you know. It's so like, and also like our when it comes to touring production, you're hiring the orchestral players just on the day of, and you'll never get the luxury of having an additional rehearsal the day before, because the cost will just multiply, and you can't really do that. So then my job is to create an arrangement that is playable with just one rehearsal. So on the day of, we do one rehearsal / sound check, and then we do the show. And it has to be absolutely playable, like no mistakes whatsoever. And we have to minimize the questions. So you add cue notes, you add notes and stuff, so that like it's just easy to understand. And it's like a live show arrangements, and that's like very different from like, you know, creating the production stuff, right? And also arranging music for the band and orchestra is just completely different beast, right? And because like the way the sound is projected from orchestral instruments and also band instruments, electric instruments, it's absolutely different. And it's like, for example, the guitar, like when you strike a chord on an electric guitar, the sound comes out right away, right? And the cello, on the other hand, when you bow a cello, it's a little later, right? So, and there are ways to compensate this. So intentionally, you would add an accent to cello so that the player will just kind of play ahead of the beat, just a tiny bit. And you have to like think about these things. And also you have this, like, if the band is like super loud in the mid range and also like lower register, it's like, it's so like, there's so much going on. So what you do, then you simplify contrabass, cello, tuba stuff, and you intentionally use them for like accenting the stuff. And you would use more woodwinds and brass, and just like it kind of depends on like what kind of sound you want, but like you do have to write in a very specific way to make it sound great at the live show. And also like we do use backing track for the orchestra, so that like you can like slightly reinforce them, because sometimes when the band gets so loud you can't hear them, and we don't want that. So we reinforce them just a tiny bit, and the engineers have like they have flexibility to kind of compensate the volume level. And for Sonic Symphony shows, the audience actually gets louder than the band. Like they get louder than anybody else. So it's just nice to have like the luxury of like just pushing just a little bit, so that you can still enjoy the show when everybody's singing their ass off, and it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So there are a lot of things to think about, and then like when the composer says stuff, they were like, "Oh, by the way, I like that part," and then like we revise stuff constantly, and then we have to print out the sheet music, and it's it's a lot to do. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of what I do, but like initially I started from forming this project called Video Game Orchestra. And we posted stuff online, and when I was in college, I talked to my friends, "Hey, do you want to play in the video game ensemble?" And they're like, "We don't know what that is, but okay." And I've always liked the symphonic rock stuff. So of course I had orchestra instruments and band instruments, just like everything's like mashed up. And back then I didn't know anything. I had never written any scores back then, but I kind of did it, and players would just tell me, "Hey, you can't do this because of this. So gradually you just start learning, and you read books and just read other people's scores, and that's how you kind of start learning. And your goal should, when you work with performers, your goal should always be, is it playable from the beginning to the end without stopping? That should be your goal. If they have to stop in the middle and to move to like next bar or something, then like I think there's a problem. And if the woodwinds are playing from the beginning to the end continuously, there's a problem, because they have to breathe, right? So I always think about like I'm always working with humans, like not machines. And you have to care about these things. So yeah, like that's kind of how I got trained. And there you have it. I don't know if I'm going over the time, but but yeah, lots of things.
Very well said. Great advice.
Cool. I love that segue, because that's a really
Orchestration's important.
yeah. Because I think, I mean, you're touching on something that's like a fundamental like philosophy of arranging, like arranging for live performance versus arranging for an album or something that's produced or something like that. So like, again, a little bit more background about me. I started off as a performer. I'm a saxophonist. For most of my video game music career, it was performing and, sitting in with people like, the Super Soul Bros, and you just kind of go and you have to learn it, and you have to learn these tunes. And it wasn't actually until a couple of years ago where I met, shout out to Eric Beckman of Kirby's Dream Band.
Woo!
He got me involved with Dillinger Tools, and it's a totally different philosophy, because it's produced music. It's you get as many takes as you need. It's like Jackie Chan. You can do whatever crazy stunts you need because you have unlimited takes, right? So it doesn't have to be playable live. It's great if it is, but you can try stuff that you can never try live, and pushing that envelope is also really fun and cool.
Absolutely.
I'm actually just curious, since we've set up that dichotomy, how many people here try to arrange for live? And how many are on the other side of the spectrum, produce, or who do both?
I do
yeah,
both.
I think,
you can do both. Right?
yeah, I think they're both super valid. And I think what I've learned over the past couple of years is even if you are arranging something that is designed to be harder than what you would do live, thinking about how it would possibly be played live helps. It just helps make the song seem more natural and more just interesting. It's
Yeah.
just the best band you've ever heard doing
Right,
it
right.
with unlimited rehearsal as opposed to.
Yeah, we're actually right now we're doing that. So we're adding new songs to the set, and one of them is like meticulously edited modern metal song.
Mm-hmm.
And playing this live perfectly is just a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we have to like sit down and all that shit. Like we have to practice like all day long. Like that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when Tony's here, I mean, he does both
Yeah,
sides.
yeah.
All right, so I want to give just a high level way to level up your arrangement. So I come from a performing background. I've done all these different sorts of genres, and actually one of the genres that has influenced me the most is doing musical theater. So I grew up doing, theater kids, woo. And we always talk about, arrangements that tell a story, and we should all be thinking about how we can have a narrative flow throughout. But I want to get actually super literal with it. So there's the traditional sort of 3-act structure from like Western literature. You've got, your exposition, you set things up, you've got the midpoint, you've got a climax, and then you have a little bit of denouement. I find that that's sometimes helpful when arranging. You do want to have a good, satisfying climax, but I think sometimes it can be a little boxy and a little bit
Limiting.
Yeah, limiting. Mm-hmm. So what I discovered is it's an Eastern philosophy called Kisho Tenketsu. Did I pronounce that okay?
Kisho Tenketsu.
What?
Kisho Tenketsu.
Thank you.
It's Japanese.
Thank you. Yes, I don't speak, but thanks.
I'm here for that.
Cool. But anyway, it's broken up into 4 parts. There's the introduction of an idea, the development of an idea, a twist on that idea, and then you bring it all to a conclusion. And if you want a perfect analogy for this philosophy, look at video games. Specifically, I'm going to use an example from Super Mario 3D Land, I think 3D World. So this is, and I learned this from the YouTube channel Game Maker's Toolkit. He was talking about it in the terms of level design, but it's actually perfect analogy for music design. So look, you've got this level with these switches, and if you jump, they rotate, right? So you have the introduction of this new mechanic. And if you can see on the right, there's actually like a floor underneath you, so if you fall, you're good, you don't lose a life. This is just, they're trying to introduce you to this new concept. And then, immediately after, well, they have the same exact concept, but look, now there's no floor underneath you. So this is the development of that concept. Mm-hmm. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to develop it and, kind of expand on it a little bit more. Now, we add the twist. So we've got these little, shockwave things. So now you don't get to decide when you jump. You have to jump in order to avoid those shockwaves. So that's the twist on the idea. And then finally, the level ends with you bringing it all together for one satisfying conclusion to the flagpole. And if you go through and you play like modern Mario games, they all follow this structure. And it's very explicit, and if you read the behind the scenes, they are very much trying to do this idea. And then they're done with the idea, they throw it away. It's really good for music too. And if you think about traditional AABA structure, that's kind of what it is, right? You take an idea, you introduce the idea, you develop the idea, then you take it somewhere kind of different, and then you bring it all back for a satisfying climax. So I'm going to use a musical example. I'm sure you can't see that, but this is for a recent arrangement that I did for Dwelling of Duels, featuring the Super Soul Bros, called In the Donk. So it's New Donk City, and it's taking from a bunch of different genres, and it's specifically referencing Earth, Wind, and Fire. Now, I'm not going to play the whole song because that'd take up too much time, but as the song is playing, I'm going to fast forward through bits, and I'm going to show you how we're doing the...
Kisho Tenketsu.
Thank you. Each of the different... So embarrassing. I've learned something today. Thank you. So the 4 different parts of it. The introduction of the idea, development idea, twist on the idea, and then bringing it back. So let me exit out here. I'm going to play it. Again, I'll fast forward through bits and pieces, but you got your introduction. This is using Earth, Wind, and Fire's In the Snow. And got the ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da, which is part of the new song City. We got an intro vamp, setting things up again. We're still kind of like clearing our throat. And here we have the first statement of the melody. It's very simple. It's just the melody as you know it, right? And now we start to layer in a couple of additional horn hits. Oh, hey! Speaking of the devil, there's the... Woo! And now we have the development of the idea. We're doing the same melody again, but now we're adding these backing lines in the horns. And I'll just skip ahead a little bit. This is the bridge from the original song. Okay, so here's where we're starting to get a little bit of a mini twist. There's like there's kind of two twists in the song. So solo section, very standard way of developing a song and starting to twist it. I'll skip ahead through the solos. And now we have the big twist of the song, which being the Super Soul Bros, you want to have a big twist, and it's a Robbie gospel style piano breakdown. This kind of plays out for a little bit. I really don't want to skip ahead, but I'll let it play. So obviously we brought everything way down. We've removed a lot of instruments to give Robbie a chance to shine and do his solo thing. Again, this is all going to be building towards a sort of satisfying climax. And as you see, we're going to start layering the horns back in slowly. Again, this is all sort of working towards this big climax where Brian Shue's going to come in with a screaming guitar solo at the end. You can hear the percussion starting to build up as well. There's more stuff being added. Now we got some horns coming in. Again, just building up this tension because it's going to just... Adding a little backbeat, that was Anthony Franceschi on one. Again, these are a lot of techniques that you get from live performance where you're just finding ways to increase and add tension incrementally, and then here's the big payoff. There you go. And here we got our big... the climax of the song, right? So we've got the melody going in the background. But it's full, everybody's playing, everyone's full tilt, we got the guitar solo going, and that's it. And then if you're not hooked at that point of the song, yeah. And again, just that final restatement of the melody. Things kind of wrapping up. You know, this is the denouement, sort of. We go back to the take that intro. Yeah.
That healed trauma for me.
So yeah, 4-part structure. I think it's helpful and it's a little bit gives you a little bit more flexibility than like a 3-act structure. Again, take an idea, introduce it, develop it, twist it, go in a different direction, and then bring everything back out. It's really helpful and it's really good for singles. You know, if that's what you're trying to do, I find it extremely useful as an arranging concept. Yeah. Cool. That's me.
All right. Wow, I have to follow that. All right, so a little bit about me. Again, just started off as a DJ, then became a producer. You know, I was doing school dances, homecomings, proms, and stuff. And then once I've done enough of those, I was like, I'm sick of playing the same songs over and over again. And then I had started off making original music, and then I would send them to record labels, and then they would reject and decline. And I'm like, is my music just not good? Do I actually suck? And then I was like, one day I was like, you know what? I love video game music. I'm just going to make a remix to video game music and post it on the internet. See what happens. And lo and behold, here I am on this panel here. Obviously, somebody thinks I'm useful.
I do.
Couple of games that I like. Mario Kart.
I do too.
If you guys have listened to my music, Mario Kart is my absolute favorite soundtracks. Love Mario Kart music. And of course, some notable. Animal Crossing is my favorite. That was my first GameCube game ever in 2001. We'll always love that. I would literally just have the music playing when I was working on homework. Like, I would just let the game sit, and I would just work on. That was my moment when I was like, I love video game music, way back. And then, of course, a couple of favorite artists. You know, some of the. I'm more of like the electronic realm here, so it's taking a step aside from the orchestral area. Mine is a lot less complex than that. There's a lot less to it than 800 different instruments playing at once. And I'll kind of go more in depth on that. So, okay, so for me, I'm more on the production side, so less live here. For me, structure is the number one thing that I start with. So I always start by making the structure of the song before I literally do anything else. I get the song from intro to finished before I dive into the sound design, before I dive into what kind of kicks or snares I want to use. I try my best just to get the structure down before, because you open up a VST, you start going through presets, and you're like, and then you go through snares, and then you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I've been
like,
there before.
You're gonna lose interest in making the song because you're going through 80 sample packs of snares, and it's just, it's not worth the struggle. Just pick a snare and just put it in for now.
Yeah.
You can get to that later on once you've got that structure down. And number one, reference tracks. You need to utilize songs that you already like. When I first started off, I was copying like Avicii and Martin Garrix because they were more instrumental, and I would just literally copy, like, here's their intro, here's their build, here's their drop. That's exactly what I did. And then that was it. Like, song's done. Boom. Now, once the song is finished, what can I do to add the twist? What can I do to have my flip on the song? I don't want to make just a full one-on-one cover. I want to make sure that I'm adding something. I want to do something that isn't just the original track. Obviously, you want to have all the elements if you can, because of course people are going to discover you and say, wow, this is great because it's got every element. But again, you still want to have your own flavor, to it. And then for me, I always say you want to make the listener want more with ear candy, and you don't want to give them too much. So almost exactly what he was showing. You want to take away things from your mix at once. There are times when you can have a bass line play the entire time and somehow it works. Mm-hmm. But rarely does that actually work. Like, you need to take away and you have to take away elements so that you make the listener want more in the track. So you have this climax section, at least for electronic music, you have 2 drops typically. The first drop is kind of like that initial, like, here's the bang-in section. And then once that second drop comes, what can you do to make that second drop shine more so than that first one? Because you don't just want to copy-paste. One of the biggest problems with the electronic music is you make the first half of the song and then you copy it, you paste it, you call it a day. If you want to go the extra mile, you should add something new to it, whether it's a harmonic element, something that's different key changes, anything like that to make it different. That way you can, again, spice up your mix to make it less, for lack of a better word, boring, because you want to make sure that the listener is always interested and all that stuff. And one little thing at the very bottom here, I just put, there should be an audible change in the music every 8 bars, always. Unless you're doing an extended mix, but I don't like extended mixes because those are 5 minutes and nobody has time for that anymore. The attention span of people nowadays, because of TikTok and Vine, have killed it. It's killed it. I'm a big fan of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's my perfect song. If I can get a song done in 2 minutes, 30 seconds, because that's the replay value. Think of a Spotify stream. If you have a 4.5 minute song versus a 2-minute song, you're gonna get twice the streams, and they're gonna keep streaming the same song anyway. So you might as well put out a song that's just got the goods.
Yeah.
It's you get it, you set it,
No fluff.
intro, boom, out, replay. You don't need to put 5 minutes of the same song. Just shorten it. You know, your song is, yeah. Anyway, next slide here. Okay, and to follow up on that,
Tell
less
him.
is more. Hear the rasp in my voice. Less is more.
Preach.
So, for an electronic guy like me, my friends, all of them are like, do you have Serum? Do you have Silent? Do you have Native Instruments? Do you have Nexus? I'm like, no. Who cares? Pick one. Pick one that you like. Do research. Pick a VST that you really strongly like. There's a million out there, yes. And some people collect them like they're collector's items. Oh, I've got every VST. Now what? You got too many options. Now you're not going to do anything because you're back to the snare sample pack. Now you're going through every preset of the lead synths, and you're like, what am I going to pick? Just pick a few that you really strongly like. Do research and pick one. That way you're not wasting money too. Otherwise you're spending all this money on VSTs you're never going to touch. Collecting virtual dust, if you will.
Yeah, it helps you develop your sound too. I feel
Exactly.
like I don't know if Tuck is here in the audience, but like Tuck has like a couple of
Yes.
he knows you can hear a Tuck sound and you can hear a Tuck synth and you know because he's developed it.
Yep.
He sticks with the ones that work.
Yes, and the next bullet point is save presets that fit and use stock plugins. So,
Correct.
use stock plugins.
Correct.
Thing is, when you think of a band, it's not like they have a bank of 80 presets to pick from. You went to a concert, they're going to have the same guitar sound, the same amp. It's not like they're going to, out of nowhere, just have this new sound. Pick some sounds that you like, that define what you want to make. Define the sounds. Now, yes, you can dive and use different sounds every once in a while, but the core sounds that you use should be the same. Every song I've ever released uses the exact same kick drum, just in a different key. I have one kick sample, one, and all I do is I just change the pitch, whatever the root note is of the song. That's it. No more kicks for me because too many.
And that's your kick. You
That's
owned
the
it.
kick,
Yeah.
the kick.
The kick.
And then when you hear my songs in a live setting at a club, you know that's a player 2 kick. You know that kick drum is mine. So you want to establish your sound in that way too. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, you don't have to always be changing. Oh, I need to change this because it's a different song. Not true. If it's your sound, you want to keep some of the same elements that you use in all of your music to at least have some, I'm getting off track here.
That's okay.
Okay. Utilize the same sounds and samples. I just said that. Perfect. Okay. And then if you're questioning anything, start removing.
Yeah.
Do not add. If you are listening to your song and you think it's finished, you're like, what can I do to add this? Don't. Just, if anything, you should be removing. You should just be anything that's in there that you really, because this is how people get overcomplicated and they never finish tracks. That's why all of you guys probably have 1,000 tracks.
Finish your
that are
projects.
unfinished because you're like, what can I do to make this better? It's already as good as it's going to be. It's good. Don't undersell yourself. Don't think it's not going to be good because you don't have a shaker there or because you don't have a whatever. Just less is more. Key. That's it. And then again, your song is probably longer than it needs to be. Case in point. Mm-hmm. If your song is good, it can start and has a good end. You're golden. That's good. And if your computer looks like that, you throw it out. It's great. Too much. It's too much.
the trash.
All right, should we do Tony?
Is that me?
Tony time.
This one work?
Yeah.
All right.
Give yourself
Just want to add on real quick to player 2. If you're doing a certain genre or something, I found that if you just pick like one sample selection pack or one sound selection pack and just start from there, and then if you need to sub stuff out later, that is like super fast for productivity.
Squeaky.
Agreed.
Hold on, just gotta get my mic set up. What's up, everybody? My name is Tony Dickinson. I just came with from rehearsal with Zom Palambi's game night, so check that out tomorrow at 2:20 on the main stage. That's why I'm late. What did I miss? Nothing? Okay, cool. So my name is Tony Dickinson. A few of you guys know who I am. I am probably most known as like the lead producer and arranger for the Tiberian Sons. We've worked with Frank Lepacki. I produced the Command & Conquer remastered soundtrack. Worked with the Soul Brothers on Metal Slug Awakening, which I believe still hasn't been released in America, which kind of blows my mind, which is very unfortunate because we did a lot of cool arranging on that. I don't know if any of the favorite stuff is really relevant. What I do want to talk about is my arrangement style is definitely 5 minutes minimum type arrangements. Sorry, dude.
You're on the other end of the table. It's good.
Getting a diversity of
Keep you
viewpoints
apart.
here. This is
Mine's the electronic portion, so yes.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different style. Yeah, more like orchestral metals, the Tiberian Sons sort of vibe. You just go to the next slide. But I did want to things that I've learned about arranging. I'm really big into production, and I think production and arrangement really works hand in hand, and the better you get at one, the better the other will be, and you'll make more intelligent decisions when you are arranging. So, for instance, like if you get really good at I'll talk about the production later. Let me just go off my bullet points first. So, first of all, don't bother arranging if you don't feel it, right? If you're trying to arrange a song, it has to inspire you because the inspiration will help you keep working on it. There was a charity thing I did maybe like 10 years ago or something where it was like somebody put in a bid to have arrangers arrange different songs, and the one that was picked for me I just did not dig, and I put it off for like at least a year. But it was that's just me. I just didn't dig it. But sometimes you just got to do it because it's a job and you're being paid for. So that one's on me. One thing that especially if you're trying to get like a whole album done or like a lot of material done, what really helped for me is I started doing this a few years ago. Is pre-transcribing the material. So you just have like a whole bunch of MIDI regions that you can kind of like copy and paste, and it just kind of helps with the flow when you're trying things out, especially when you're focusing on finding the sounds or splitting parts up. It just saves a lot of time. I don't like changing like the frame of mind too often while I'm working, because it's like when you're like programming synths is a completely different frame of mind than arrangement. So I like to try to put everything as in like large enough blocks as possible. Like getting the ball rolling and then stop, and then maybe I can work on the production and make it sound a little bit better so that I make better decisions on arrangement. If you're having a hard time, like just getting the ball rolling, I don't know if you guys heard of the do something principle. It's like just sit down and do it for at least 15 minutes. And then if you still don't want to do it, then you can stop, and that's fine. But most of the time, if you just get the ball rolling, like you'll keep going for longer than 15 minutes. Generally for me, this will probably be different for everybody, I will do most projects about an hour and a half at a time, and I feel like once I hit an hour and a half, that's when I get like the diminished returns sort of thing, where it's just like, you put in all the work, and then you're kind of like, all right, what happens next? And then you're playing through the song, and then you're just kind of wasting time. And I think once, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel like when I reach that point, it's like, all right, maybe I'll put it away, maybe come back, maybe come back to the next
About the 2 hour to 3 hour mark for me, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't like working on the same project for like 8 hours at a time. Sometimes you have to, especially if there's a deadline or something, but yeah, exactly. If you can choose not to, if you can choose to split your time up, I like doing maybe like a few songs over the course of a few days versus like one song on Monday and then the next song on Tuesday. It's just too exhausting for me. If you don't have relative pitch, please work on that, because that's really going to help you out. Like the ability to hear melodies just like by their scale degrees. You don't have to have perfect pitch. If you don't have it now, you probably won't ever have it. But a lot of, like most people can train the relative pitch, the ability to hear chord progressions, hear scales, intervals, and that will also help you develop like the ear inside your mind, which will help you process what you want to do before you put it down, and as opposed to like putting the note in and then hitting the up or down arrow until it sounds good. Like, I've done that before earlier on, but you waste just a lot of time doing it. So if you have the ability to process the music in your brain before you put it down, it's gonna speed up your workflow so much. And it's just a good skill as a musician to begin with, having relative pitch.
Yeah, and if you want to train it, I mean, I'm actually curious, how many people here do play a live instrument? Yeah. So the best way I've found to like train your ear is to go to jams. Like go to, jam clinic, learn some tunes, learn them by ear. If you, even if you don't have the music in front of you, learning to hear those intervals in your head and learning, the contour of a melody, that's how you get that stuff.
Yeah. And that leads me into the next point is when you guys are learning how to write music for other instruments, you don't necessarily need to know exactly how to play them. It definitely does help, especially if you're trying to write it for live playing later. But you don't, like, I don't know how to play the French horn, but I've listened to enough French horn music that I kind of know, like, here's what kind of tends to happen. And idiomatic is the key word, making it sound like it belongs or supposed to be played that way. That just also involves just absorbing a lot of music and getting an idea for how things tend to be written in certain scenarios, especially like orchestral music. And learning idiomatic usage of instruments will add to like the authenticity, I guess, of your, if that's a good word, for your arrangements. Everything affects everything else is what I was starting to talk about earlier, where training really every skill in general, but in this specific instance, your production and your arrangement, if you are better at making your sounds sound good, then you will make more intelligent decisions. Like, so if you have a weak kick drum, you can change the sample, but you can also spend some time to just make that kick drum sound better, and then it will fill up more space. And if you have a good kick drum, then that will inform what kind of bass sound you have to have as you start building up the foundation of your arrangements. And then when you have the kick and the bass, then that will affect all the other arrangements. I think one of the my pitfalls earlier on was that I wasn't that great at production in the beginning, and all my sounds sounded really thin, so I just kept adding more and more things, and it ended up just being too cluttered. And what would have solved it is if I used better sounds or learned how to mix it so that they fill up more space. Because yes, less is more for sure if you can get away with it. That's always the goal, but my shit always has way too many layers. Anyway, I've gotten better at it over time.
Two opposite ends of the
More is
spectrum.
more, guys. More is more.
More is more for me, for sure.
More is more.
Snare drum might not make a song, but it'll definitely break song. My dwelling of duelers will appreciate that one. I fully stand by that statement. A bad snare drum will ruin a song experience for me. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's my opinion.
Claps.
Sure. Sure, Joe. 80,
Everything's a hoedown with Joe.
I feel sorry for anyone who missed the beatboxing segment before.
Yeah.
80% of a good mix is just proper level balancing, dynamic control, and EQ. So that is something I try to tell everybody when they're learning how to mix, is you can get a really good mix if you just know how to balance your volume levels, learn how to use a compressor, and learn how to use an equalizer.
Yeah.
Those three things will get you really close to a pretty good mix. So, hopping off of what he said is just like, everybody's always buying up all these like easy plugins and stuff, but like the process of learning how to use a compressor and an equalizer will train your ear to tell you and be able to tell when the easy plugins actually aren't helping your mix, because you won't know otherwise. But like, it takes a lot of practice. It takes years and years of practicing on a lot of material to kind of develop the ability to use those tools effectively. Before you move that EQ, try to figure it out in your head what you're hearing. Use an equalizer that can solo the band you're affecting to make sure you're doing the right move. Wrong EQ choices make things worse. That was a big thing that helped me, is if you have an equalizer that can solo the band you're affecting, it's good to like try to hear what you think is the problem, solo it first before you actually do the movement. Because what can happen with the old school technique of like boosting it up to see if you found the right frequency is when you boost any frequency too far, it's going to sound like a problem. And so when you, and then that will make you make a wrong EQ move. And so there always seems to be a sweet spot where all EQ lies. And if you're boosting it too much or cutting it too much and the wrong frequency, it's just going to create a different problem. But was that my only? I think it's my only other slide.
Yep. Oh,
okay.
it's me.
Can I?
Oh yeah, you want to?
Okay, I wanted to demonstrate a Tiberian Sons arrangement. We just released an Ace Combat remix album.
Ace Combat?
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. 10 of them.
It's a really good album.
So I tend to be a little bit more of a conservative arranger, and especially in the case of the Ace Combat soundtracks, like they're so good.
That's the
They're
prelude to the
so
track.
good, and I don't want to change too much. But in this case, in this arrangement, this was two songs, Magic Spear and Daredevil, if you guys have played the game. That both were awesome, and it's more of a mashup, but there are motifs from each song that kind of blend in with, kind of mix and match. But go ahead. So here it starts like Daredevil, but it's using the Magic Spear string motif instead. So it's still a little Magic Spear, a little Daredevil in this intro. Getting a little bit more Magic Spear-like, slowly moving that transition over. Mostly original guitar, solo, melody, whatever that I came up with for this. It's actually a Daredevil section as well. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Go to...
That was
The whole thing's 8 minutes, so you can watch it on YouTube. Yeah. But that's an instance of like being really inspired by the source material, but also like the source material is so good I didn't really want to change it, so just mash it up. Yeah, but I'll let Lacey have this one.
Oh, jeez. That was dope. Yeah, give it up. That was amazing.
Whatever.
Okay, so my name's Lacey Johnson. I am a YouTube musician / session musician, professional musician. I work in the music industry. I have for the last 12 years. And I kind of wanted to approach this panel a little differently because I get questions a lot on mixing process and mixing for live also specifically, because I am a solo performer. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. Every instrument that you hear, unless it's orchestral for the most part, I'm performing. So the drums, the bass parts, the guitars, all of that, I perform and write the parts myself. And keys, obviously. But yeah, a lot of the music that I really enjoy is rock and metal music. That's primarily what I really enjoy listening to, and that's the style that I create. But I'm also a pop girly. So I I like K-pop a lot. I'm very influenced by a lot of the instrumental choices and production choices of K-pop. And just pop music in general. I'm a big fan. So a lot of my vocal choices that I make often are also inspired by pop music. Go to the next one. So these are some things that I've learned just working in the industry that I think are very applicable to arranging in general, recording, mixing, because there's a lot of pitfalls, and everyone, of course, is so different. But something that I've found that's very helpful is don't be afraid to double parts with unconventional instruments. A lot of time in professional studios, what we do is we will double drum parts with electronic drums. It's more common than you think. I get questions a lot of, how are your drums so punchy? I'm like, there's quite a few samples under there. But it helps. A lot of the time, too, I'll double some synth parts with guitar parts. I'll flip back and forth. I'll mix them to where they're almost inaudible, which is another part that the next part. You're mixing to feel the instrument. And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice I got from a producer that I used to work with a lot. You want to feel whatever you're recording, not necessarily always hear it. And it's a fundamental principle that I'm sure Tony relates to a lot too, as someone who layers things, because I'm the same way. But it's amazing. A lot of times I'll choose very aspirate sounding synthesizers just to bring air to the rest of the instruments. You can feel it if it's not there. And that's the whole point, is I want to be able to bring life to whatever section I'm recording, and whatever arrangement, whatever the intention is, because I do a lot of styles. But you want to be able to feel whatever the intention is with the instruments that I include, and I'm very specific about that. So don't ever limit yourself also to a genre or a box or things you've done before or things you want to do. I would say so much of good mixing happens all at once, in that if you feel inspired to try something, adding a flugelhorn into an arrangement, you've never worked with it before, but that's what comes to you in your head, do it. My God, just do it. Because really, you never know what that might inspire within you. If you're feeling like, I need a change, I don't want to do this on guitar, I don't want to do this lead here, but goodness, a bassoon would be neat. It's like whatever, my brain is bizarre. Whatever comes to me at that moment, I'll try it. And especially with VSTs, there's no reason not to. If you can record it in MIDI, you can just throw it around and audition it with some other sounds. And then, of course, if you have live musicians, you can move in that way as well. But when you're working for yourself, like I do most of the time, it's kind of trying new things in my own brain, and saying, yeah, why don't we alternate what our lead instrument is here? Why don't we experiment with a new sound, just to give myself some new perspective and see like, oh, actually that tone wasn't so bad. I think that does fit pretty well. I've done that a lot. Stock plugins are great. I can't tell you how much stock plugins from Logic I use every single day of the year, every single day. You do not need a multi-$1,000 orchestral library to sound great. You do not need it. It is nice, but especially it's way more important, like Tony said, to understand what everything is doing, what all your controls are doing, what your instrument adds to the arrangement, regardless of what it is. It's helpful to study. It's helpful to study the natural frequencies and ranges of instruments. You can get a chart, even just to check yourself on ranges if you're not, an orchestral musician like myself. I play piano in orchestra, but it's not the same. We don't have a limit on range. But it's really important because honestly, if you know where something's supposed to fit and you arrange it as such and you are very intentional when you do that in your recording process, it doesn't take a long time to get a pretty good arrangement. I think trying to do too much with one single instrument as opposed to maybe creating a section, creating supporting instruments, it's a way better way to go about things to actually start making progress and getting things done. As someone who also has many projects on the table that are always in limbo, it's really, really good to be able to make progress because you never know what that next section that you finish might inspire. And that goes for no matter the genre, no matter the length of the piece, no matter how confident you are of the arrangement. If you can get through a roadblock and maybe try something new, the rest of the piece opens up for you. So it's nothing but an opportunity if you can take the time to really give yourself that opportunity to kind of learn where your instruments are supposed to go. You can really build out from there, which is nice. And then something I do that I'm sure everyone here does as well, build templates in your DAW, in your video editing software. Build templates for yourself to save time. I always save my vocal plugins. I always save a lot of my drums and my guitar tones just because I know what I like, and I've spent a long time harnessing my tones and really, really reining them in to easily just know exactly, I'm gonna record all my drums, get that done, knock out the bass, split my guitars, and then we go from there. And already I have a foundation. And that especially goes for the next slide, which is arranging for live. So a lot of the time, if you don't know, I'm a solo performer. I perform keytar, guitar, vocal. So I have to be a little thoughtful just in how I prepare a live mix because I'm using my own backing tracks. And a lot of the time, I do have to do some subtractive mixing, some additive mixing, just to fill out how I would want it to sound live. Because my goal isn't to sound like I'm playing with a backing track, right? It's to completely engross you, the audience, in the music that I'm performing. And I'm very big on vocal harmony. Believe me, I am just addicted to creating 10-part harmonies if I could. Yeah. So it's something I'm really thoughtful of because when I'm performing live, and any major act that you'll see live has most of the time some sort of backing vocal to a degree, but even a lot of the time if there's something I'm producing that's very metal, like I do a lot of Guilty Gear Strive music, and I can't tell you how many layers are in those vocals. It's tons and tons and tons because the vocal needs to be present. The vocal is your priority if you have a vocal song. This is something for my guitar players. I love you all so much. Turn your guitars down if you have vocals in your mix, okay? Yeah. Do that for me, okay? Because the vocals, it's just a thing. Unless they're ambient and not meant to be the center of the mix, you need to be very thoughtful of how, because they're constantly fighting and competing for each other, for dominance. And when you have vocals, it's important to widen your stereo image just a bit because that also makes your vocals feel a lot more present in the mix. Not too far. Or you can if you have like 30 stems, which I do sometimes. If I'm creating a choir, I want to be sure I'm creating it like I'm a choir there, and I'm very thoughtful of that when I'm mixing, especially for a live arrangement. Come to my show tonight at Main Stage at 6:30, you'll hear that. Woo! But anyway, it's really important to create space up the middle because in a live environment, unless you're doing 100% of your own mixing on site, you'll have a live engineer who's going to put you up the middle, okay? That's the way it is. So you want to get ahead of that in your mix a lot and create just a little space on either side of the middle, because it's going to make whatever your lead instrument is, if you're a guitar player, if you're a synth player like myself, if you're a vocalist, if you're a little bit of all that, that gives you so much more space to be heard and have your backing track fill the rest of the sound. That's always the goal, is to have a nice full sound when you're working with tracks. It's really easy for them to feel thin, so it's important to kind of audition your tracks in a few different environments and see and make sure and play with the levels a little bit, just to be sure you're really pumping through and making the audience feel good. Yes, if you have backing vocals, raise them. Again, it just creates the image, like the vocals are there on stage with me. That's always what I'm looking for. And then the fun part is, we've all been to maybe stadium tours, concert tours, symphony tours. There can be very, very fun changes that happen live, and that's I think a big appeal of live music. If you're seeing someone on tour and they're doing stops that aren't there, or they're doing solo sections that aren't there, or mashups or whatever, those are the moments that are really, really special for an audience. And they're really fun. They keep me on my toes because I have to remember them. But I love to add creative changes or new sections in live arrangements, just to kind of throw someone off. If they've heard it on my record, and suddenly it's brand new, that's a peak of interest. And any moment that you can create for an audience is worth doing. Any moment that's very special, that's making someone excited to see you live again, because you never know what they're going to do again. I'm famous for doing that. It's really, really fun to be able to involve your audience as another player on stage with you, in that it's a surprise to everybody. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what I got.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before we get to the Q&A, Joe's gonna have to leave for another panel, so we're gonna be taking a group picture real quick. How do we do the?
I can do like a question.
Who's good at doing the picture? Like doing the whole like picture where you do it back.
A selfie?
Here, thank you.
Yeah, the one.
You've
where
got it.
I believe. Can you do it on your phone or something?
Stand up and take it.
Yeah. Or do you want to use my phone? Yeah. I'll just use my phone.
Oh, actually, I can take my laptop.
Oh yeah, that works.
There we go.
Oh, let me
Okay. You don't need to.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Feel free to send them to me. Awesome.
Cool.
All right. Do we want to do a question or two?
Yeah.
We're gonna do some Q&A. If you have a question for Joe specifically, that was a great time. But if you have a question for any of us, now is also a great time, because
How did I write it? The whole presentation. I listen to a lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire. I love In the Stone, and I mean, there's something to be said for like little sly Easter eggs and references. Like, there's a bunch of them in there. Like every sort of late '70s, early '80s. Like, there's Stevie Wonder references in there. There's other Earth, Wind, and Fire references. It's the same kind of chord progression as "That's the Way of the World," so I use the horn line. Yeah, I mean, it's just like that era had so many songs that had very, very similar grooves and feels that you can just pick and choose you just create this mashup of ideas, and then you just work with somebody like as talented as the Super Soul Bros, and they just intuit that stuff, right? Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I will say, I mean, one of the things I've kind of forgot to mention, but like almost everything that I have done in the past like 3-4 years has been a collaboration, right? I don't really like doing solo stuff. I don't like I'm happy with my saxophone playing, but nobody wants to listen to solo saxophone, and like
Don't speak
I
for
have
all of
more
us.
fun. I have more fun when I'm working with others, and like the thing that I really love, talking about what's the use of an instrument. This is sounding a little bit like, what's the use of this person, this musician? Because everybody has like some 1 or 2 or 3 or 1,000 things that they do better than anybody else, and they have a vibe or they have a sound, and it's really cool. And like when I play with Ian and Carrie and I do stuff with them, like I'm trying to think about like how can I make them sound as good as possible, find a song that like works for their vibe, find a something. You know, when I arrange for someone, I'm thinking about how to really use their special sauce. And for me, that's the thing that really excites me, when I can do an arrangement that feels like something that they would also have done for themselves. And that just means listening to a bunch of people that are my friends. So that's fine. All right, I gotta go.
Thank you, Joe. Keep coming up here for more questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so we'd love. Yes. That is a really good question. I'm not the best with phase issues, so I'll let everyone else tackle that one. But I have heard the advice before. Really good piece of advice from, I once asked James Hoffman. He's known for mastering a bunch of albums in the VGM space and mixing a bunch of albums. And I once asked him, James, like, how do you do it? How do you get such good mixes? And he's like, the truth, I spend most of my time mixing in Melodyne. I like tighten up parts because like and he explained it really well, because in VGM and like in these recording spaces, like there's a lot of times in other music environments, you might have months to rehearse a piece or something. You don't have that time. Like sometimes you just get parts. I've received parts from a lot of friends in the community, and I've given people parts and been like, yeah, so you have like 2 weeks or like 1 week. So just tightening that up definitely helps synchronize things.
I would hope that there wouldn't be phase issues between like two different people. Phase issues should only happen like if you're recording like a drum set and then like one of the mics go out of line, right? But as far as like rhythmic tightness, which might be the question, yeah, there sometimes has to be adjustment to be done. Like the ideal way is that everybody gets in the same room and records, of course. But you know, with the internet, it definitely happens more remote over time. And sometimes you just gotta sit down and you just gotta do the work, as in like lining things up and cutting them. And I actually try to avoid using the stretching algorithms if I can, and I try to actually like cut and move things if possible, because no matter if you stretch things, like there's always going to be some information lost. So I just prefer to keep as much information as I can, and manually cutting and moving things is actually the one. Even though it's like a pain in the ass to do, like it's so easy to just like highlight the thing and just hit Q. Quantize the whole thing, but then like it will always sound duller, essentially.
It's because of you, Lucas.
If one thing maybe is that if you send somebody a reference file in MP3 format, sometimes MP3 codecs will add just a little tiny bit of space at the beginning. So make sure it's better practice to send a WAV file, but like if MP3 just as a quick reference. I think it's maybe a more important skill if you are getting an MP3 reference. Make sure the person that's sending it to you gives you the tempo, and hopefully they can put like at least a click reference in the beginning of the track so that you can line up the reference to the click. Because it's easy to hear when it starts like flamming and you put the reference in the click track. So, yeah. But just be advised, sometimes MP3s can add a little bit of space, and that might cause some issues.
Wait, which question are we taking? Dean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts and approaches you had on adapting that kind of stuff?
Arranging, you mean? Or performance? My performance?
Someone who's produced a lot of
Yeah. Yeah, you just practice your ass off. That's all. Well, it's so like it's so like running on a treadmill every day. Like if you want to be a runner, you have to run every day. Maybe not every day, but you have to train yourself. And it's the same thing with music. Music just people think of music a little differently, but like it's a lot of times. Well, you know this better than anybody here, but it's a physical work. You have to repeat the same song over and over and over again. Like we just did a rehearsal. Like we did this particular song like 20 times, but the next day we did it again too. And until you get it right, and you just keep doing that. And for Trans-Siberian, you guys rehearse like a month long.
Yeah.
And until like everything is like completely like memorized to your body, like it's in your vein, because otherwise you can't go to tour. You're gonna fuck up, and you have to go that far. And so yes, practice your ass off, and that's it. Yeah.
I'll add on to that. Especially when you're like writing parts and making sure they're playable. I mean, it helps if you can play the instrument and can at least like kind of move your way through it. It's actually very easy to overlook the transition. Like if you're writing a riff, if you have riff 1 and you have riff 2, it's very easy to just write one riff and write the other, and then forget about how they lead into one another. Yeah, like suddenly then you're going to have to teleport your fingers to the next location, right? And so it's really easy to overlook those tiny little things, but they do add up for playability. There was someone back there for a question?
There's no shame in reorchestrating
Yeah.
for live. Wait, I think you had your hand up first. What was your question? Yeah, I covered this a little bit earlier in my slides, but listening to the genre helps. I think there's two ways I've used. I've used like active listening to like 1 or 2 songs, and if it's like something electronic, maybe try recreating it in your DAW, or if it's like a rock song, maybe just try performing it on an instrument. I found that even if you perform it badly, like I've had a couple of times where I've just grabbed my guitar and like looked at a tab and performed it poorly, but like just kind of understanding the mechanics of what they're doing like helps understand that genre a lot, and then have a lot of references or even just like an album or 2 that you can casually listen to of that genre, and also hunt down other people who've worked in that genre, because that will be a huge time saver, and they can tell you all the shortcuts to getting it right for when you jump in a new genre for the first time.
I was going to say, do not at all be afraid to ask someone who does it. I can't tell you how many times I have slid into DMs. A lot of you are here. Anyway, but don't be afraid, because really so many people are so kind and so willing to share what they've learned, because we've been through it, and I mean, it's always worth hearing what someone suggests or something that they would recommend. And most people are more than happy to answer, maybe it takes a little bit to respond, but most people are more than happy to answer that.
Question over there? Yeah, you. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, cool. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure.
Oh, boy.
Sure. I actually have quite a few I could recommend right away that are relatively inexpensive or free. Knowing a vocal stack and getting kind of creative with what you need is really important. And I'll do this very quickly. So, Waves has some really great plugins. I use their de-esser because I'm very sibilant. My voice is super, super sibilant. And for top lines, that's tricky, because especially you want to be sure you're getting enough treble to be at the top of the mix. So look into a good de-esser. I use the CLA Vocals Suite, which has a compressor, limiter, reverb, EQ built into it. It's very helpful. That alone will be a really great start just to get you some really clean vocals. You also want to be sure that you have a good noise gate. So no matter where you're recording, I just use an SM7 at home. My space is not as treated as it could be, but it's reality, right? So when I'm recording things at home, I make sure I have a really good sized noise gate just right at the end of my stack, just to make sure that there's no little pops, little AC hum, you know, things, people coming into the room, whatever. Like, it's really good to be sure you have a delicate balance. And then you can do dry, but then have a nice reverb right in one of your buses to give you just a little bit more body in that mix. And then you can get as creative as you want with harmonies and stacking those, of course. But I hope that's helpful. Sick, of course. Yeah, of course.
Do one more question.
Actually, add to
One
that
more.
real quick. I just
Over
want
there,
to say
on the
real
right.
quick. I just want to add to that. I would highly suggest reverbing your bus. You do not want to reverb on the track.
On the bus.
It's got to be the bus. That way, it keeps the vocal dry, and you're only altering a separate bus channel.
Yeah.
Also, EQ your reverbs.
Yeah.
Yes, EQ the reverbs. Absolutely.
We have time for one more question.
Great.
Excellent.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
All right. Ambitious.
That is like the Dark Souls of
deep one.
questions right there.
Wow.
Well,
That's hot.
A, you're probably going to mess up something, so you might as well get it by doing it. You're going to definitely learn from doing it. B, the buy-in of a project is important. So if you're doing a 13-piece band, what is going to be the buy-in for other people? Because you're going to have a much easier time. I mean, yes, all genres are equal, but you're also probably going to have a much easier time getting people if you're like, let's sound like Earth, Wind, and Fire, or let's sound like Snarky Puppy, and let's do it like all Mario music, than you are if you're going to be like, hey, do you want to do ambient themes from Tetris in the style of Sun? So very much think about your pitch, because if their pitch is not exciting you, you have no chance of exciting 13 other people. Also,
Yeah.
Godspeed.
Yeah. Good luck.
Well, 13 is not bad. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not bad.
This is true.
It's not bad at all. Yeah. Yeah. Well, like if you're talking about the sound, what we did in order to balance your stage mix with live instruments like that, strings or woodwinds or brass, you gotta have to remove the amps on stage. That's the only answer. I've tried every possible way, and if you have an amp, that will destroy the mix. So go direct on pedal board, and we use electronic drum kit. We don't use an acoustic drum kit ever, because if you do have one, the engineers will hate you. And also, like, it will be not a pleasant experience for the listeners. It's not gonna work. Like, believe me, I tried everything. So like, in the beginning, we had a full orchestra, massive orchestra, amps on stage, like everything. And then like slowly we're like, fuck, this doesn't work. It doesn't sound good. So then we subtracted acoustic drum kit. And then like as a guitar player, I had an amp ego. I wanted to have a Marshall stack. And, but if you have that, it doesn't work. So then you just like start subtracting everything. And at the end, that's what has to happen. Go direct, use electron drum kit, and make it as pleasant as possible. And the mixing front of the house will love you because it's easier. Yeah, and people can hear all the instruments. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to have to clear out for the next panel. Thank you all again for coming. I will be outside in the hallway if you all want to answer questions or say hi. I see a couple of y'all that I haven't gotten to say hi to. Thank you. Have a great MAGFest.